Time on Engine Masters, it is my personal quest to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. This is going to be a very different kind of episode of Engine Masters because we're going to be building a complete engine from scratch. It's going to take us a few months, and we're going to be shooting as we go so that I can show you all of the details of all of the hard parts that are going in this thing. And the other thing that makes it really special is this is about my personal quest to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. Now, I know these days you can go get an LS engine and throw a turbo on it, and you can make 1,000 horsepower, and it's no big deal, but there's no challenge in that. And because I am the flip-flops and big blocks kind of guy, I decided to do it with a naturally aspirated big block Chevy. And this is surprisingly a common combination that we're gonna do here. It's not rocket science, but versus like your standard street engine that many of you are used to, there's a lot of tips and tricks and special features here that I'm gonna show you as we go through it. Now, first, I'm gonna talk about what the combination is and why I chose it. This is going to be a 582 cubic inch engine. Now, the reason I went there is, you can build a 598, you can build a 632, you can build a 705 if you feel like it. Really, I took the advice of my good friend Steve Brule, who is the big block master and who's seen these all over the place, and he's like, Freiberger, here's the deal. You want this thing to last, you want to run a wet sump with it instead of dry sump oiling, you do not want a 4,500 stroke in this deal. So the core of it is a 4.375 stroke crank. And the thing is, at RPM, that doesn't dip down into the oil as much. It doesn't get as much of a windage problem, and it's gonna last longer. It's also in a tall deck block, and the reason for that is basically piston ring stability. I'm gonna be able to run a 6.7 inch rod in it and still have a piston that has a 1.3 inch compression height and doesn't even have the pin up into the oil ring. So ring stability is a big part of the reason why we chose that. Now let's talk about the specific components involved, and I have to thank Race Winning Brands, who has helped me out a ton with this because, no lie, this is some very expensive stuff. Starting with this Dart all aluminum tall deck block. Now, obviously the aluminum feature of it is gonna save a ton of weight off the nose, but there's a whole lot of other things that are trick about this. The bore in this thing is 4,600, and I have chosen the complete Dart package where they will prep the entire block for you and ship it ready to assemble. And so that's a huge help. It's already been decked, it's already been bored and honed, it's already been a line board. This thing is ready to go. It is beef, and I love it. I've wanted an aluminum big block forever, so I'm so happy. Now, the pistons are from Diamond. They match the 4,600 bore in this thing. Now, you'll notice they've got a very small dome on them, and I should point out this is the one custom thing in this entire program. Everything else on the table is directly off the shelf, but I wanted maximum compression, so we're running 14.7 to 1 compression ratio with just a 23 cc dome because the chamber in these cylinder heads that I'll tell you about soon is only 97. A standard big block is closer to 118 to 121. And so with that smaller chamber, you can get more compression with a flatter piston. I also gave Diamond the specs of the camshaft that I want to run, and so they're able to cut the reliefs in it so that it'll match perfectly and I'm not going to have a valve to piston problem. You can see that it has vertical gas ports in it, and the rings in this are 0.43 inch for the first and second, and then it's got a 3mm oil ring. One thing that you got to think about when you're building a serious engine like this that is just not really on the radar of your typical street deal is the piston pin itself. Diamond asked me if I was going to be running a power adder or naturally aspirated. I swore that I was never gonna put nitrous on this thing, and that's probably a lie. And so they were able to step me up to a beefier piston pin. My crank and my connecting rod both came from K1 Technologies. These are probably the most basic parts that you'll find in this engine. A 6.7 inch H-beam connecting rod, and the crankshaft is of course forged, and it's a 4.375 stroke. I've got no other real trickery in this as far as like special shaped counterweights or dual keyways or anything like that. We get into the beef of what I am counting on for the horsepower here, which is the Dart cylinder head. Now this thing thing is like a compromise in between a full race head, like their Big Chief stuff or like Spreadport stuff. It has a altered valve angle. It's 20 degrees on the intake instead of 25, which is stock, or 24, which is common in the aftermarket, but it still takes a conventional big block Chevy intake manifold. So that pattern is identical, but the intake ports are 451 cc's, so this thing's gonna flow big. And we were just lusting after the exhaust port over here, which is gnarly looking. The valves are titanium on the intake and Inconel on the exhaust. A little bit of overkill for what I'm doing, but it's gonna help me RPM. It is a 2,400 intake valve and a 1,800 exhaust. And once again, that 97 cc nice flat chamber for high compression. So that's the bones of what I'm starting with here. And now we're gonna run off and have to assemble the short block. And when I come back and give you the next update, I hope we can talk more specifically about the valve train that's gonna be going in my 582. Now it's 3 months and 1 pandemic later. What I'm gonna show you now is some of the specialized components that are gonna go on the outside of the engine that are a little bit different than your conventional big block Chevy. I'm gonna kick it off with the oiling system. If you saw episode 56 of Engine Masters, you know that we made big horsepower and improved our oil pressure curve with a very trick Moroso oil pan, and that's why these guys are our new best friends for oiling. This pan's actually a little bit different than the one that we used before because it's not two-piece, it's a little bit cheaper. I thought I would end up using a flat dragster pan, but these guys advised that the sumped pan like this actually helps oil control and deceleration. And so this is more of a conventional chassis car type pan. However, there are some differences. First of all, this windage tray is a little more unique than what you might see in a standard street pan, mostly because it's got these dividers in it. This divides the pairs of connecting rods on the throws on the crankshaft. Cylinders 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. By separating them like this, you get even more oil control. On the oil pump, Moroso makes a bunch of very cool billet pumps. This is not like a regular cast housing that you would see on one of our normal performance buildups. Now, to be honest with you, I don't fully understand what they've got going on in here. I asked them about the oil pumps because they make like 6 or 7 different part numbers on them, and they looked at what I was gonna do as far as clearances on the mains and rods and bearing diameters and RPM, and they picked a specific oil pump for me. I guess my best advice would be, if you're doing something radical like this, call them and get the advice on which pump to use, because there's a bunch of them. Next up, before we get into some hard parts, this is the head gasket that I'm gonna use. This has become pretty typical for a really high performance buildup with a lot of compression or a lot of boost or nitrous. It is what they call an MLS gasket, or multi-layer steel. You can see that there is a solid shim here in the middle, and then there's 2 outer ones that are stamped with the embossments, and then it's all coated with a sealant. Now, the point of this type of gasket is that it's got some springiness to it. Especially in a boost or nitrous application, you can see that the cylinder head really wants to lift off the block and sometimes warp a little bit. And you'll see what we used to call torching the block, which is the head lifts, and often you'll see that the fire from combustion will just go right out the side, and especially on an aluminum block like this, it will just dig a groove. It's like you took, you know, a plasma cutter and just put a big groove in the block. Obviously, I don't want that. And the Cometic MLS gasket is designed to solve that. Now we get into the hard parts, the valve train parts. And this is all a CompCam's program. They are looking at making a package for engines like this. I've mentioned to you before that this is not rocket science what I'm doing here. This is a pretty standard engine package that a lot of bracket racers use. So while it's full race, they're also looking for reliability and durability. And so we've taken a bunch of steps toward that. First of all is in the cam profile itself, which at this point is a custom grind from Comp that eventually you should be able to buy off the shelf. It's aggressive. I'm going to talk to you about the duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift, and it's going to sound to you like advertised duration. It is 284 on the intake and 300 on the exhaust. That is a no fooling solid roller camshaft. The lift is above 850 on both lobes, and the lobe separation angle is 114. Other things for durability, the camshaft in this thing is what they call a 55mm cam, meaning that the cam bearing bores in the block are actually larger than a conventional big block Chevy. Sometimes you can do that with actually a needle roller bearing. I've done it with a Babbitt bearing. The whole point is to make the camshaft core a larger diameter so that it does not flex with the high valve spring pressures that we're going to use. It's just an element of beef. The other thing is, the solid roller lifters in this engine are a larger diameter than a conventional big block Chevy. A stock big block Chevy is 843 thousandths round in the bore inside the engine block. These are the Chrysler diameter of 0.904, 904 thousandths of an inch. And so the body of the lifter is physically bigger and the roller wheel is physically bigger, which gives you a number of benefits, a larger axle, but in particular, a different ramp on the camshaft lobe. So again, this is another thing that we told comp cams what we were doing, and it's another element of the package that they're going to be putting together for these engines. And of course, the Dart block had to be custom ordered, bushed for those larger lifter diameters. Now, on a conventional big or small block Chevy or a number of other engines, they have what we call a stud-mounted rocker, this being that stud, which screws into the cylinder head right next to the valve spring and valve. And with that stud, the rocker arm slips over it. And often we will use with this what's called a stud girdle, which is a big piece of aluminum that ties together all of the rocker arm studs on one bank of the engine. The problem is we're dealing with big valves, high valve spring pressures, lots of RPM, and the stud-mounted rocker can still flex around quite a bit in that scenario. So instead, we're going to be using what's called shaft rockers. These happen to be from a company called T&D, which is sold through comp cams, and maybe one day will be part of this package that we're discussing. You can see that with the shaft-mounted rocker, there is a large aluminum brace right here that's going to bolt into the stock stud mounts, and then each rocker is going to mount individually onto that brace. It's called a shaft rocker because you can see it has a shaft running through the middle of it, which is like the axle. And then the rocker arm pivots on that axle. And by doing that, it just removes any flex side to side or up and down that's going to cause deflection, that's going to be a reliability problem, and also reduce lift and duration and things like that. Mostly it's a reliability issue. As far as valve springs, Comp has developed a new spring that is really for longevity. If you've got this thing in like a typical bracket race application, you might be changing valve springs like every 100 passes or something like that. They wanted to go closer to like 400 passes. If you look at the springs that are currently on my Dart heads, you'll see that they're a big, heavy triple spring. This one is only a double, but it's all nicely scienced out and finished to be able to control this massive camshaft and have more reliability. And since, honestly, I'm never gonna rebuild this thing once it goes in a car, I need something like that. The other thing that is a little bit different from what you'd normally see on race engines is that it's got these lightweight tool steel valve spring retainers. What you've got here is titanium, which is pretty typical. Titanium is lighter than steel, so it helps with, overall weight and valve control. The tool steel is nearly as light as titanium, but it's not going to have the wear problems that you can often see with titanium, so that's what we're going to be running there. The other huge question that I get on social media every time I show pictures of this engine is what is going on with the belt drive on the front of the engine? This is a very nice Comp Cams camshaft belt drive. It would serve the same purpose as your typical timing chain set, and often you would upgrade with a double roller, and people have asked me why I didn't use that. There's a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, in something as radical as this with a huge stroke and a lot of displacement, a lot of RPM, a lot of valve spring pressure, they use the belt instead of a chain to reduce the number of harmonics that are transferred from the crankshaft into the cam. How can I actually data log that? I don't know, but it's been common practice for a long, long time. Also, this setup is said to not eat as much power, and it is more reliable than a chain. I have broken timing chains, even double rollers. I have never broken one of these heavy-duty belts. When you install this thing, it has a very trick setup for setting the camshaft end play, but the bigger reason why this is used in race applications is right here, you can go in and loosen up these bolts and you can adjust your camshaft timing. You've seen episodes about how that can affect the power curve. Well, with this, you can be at the track and you can just go in there and move it a couple degrees one way or the other and alter that shape of your power curve. That, and it looks so trick. So anyway, that's the next level of parts we've got going on the 582. Next time you see it, it'll be a long block. And finally, it is all together in one piece. And there's some more trickery to show you. So the 582 is now loaded with a Moroso vacuum pump, which you can see here. You can buy from Moroso all sorts of different versions of this. They can advise you on what's best, including the drive unit. What this does is it works almost like an old school smog pump. There's veins inside it so that when it spins, it creates a vacuum. And you can see we've got it plumbed to the valve cover here. So the whole crankcase inside the engine is going to end up pulling about 8 inches of vacuum, and that tends to help piston ring seal, and it also helps with oil control. Now, looking at some of the other accessories here, on the top, we've got a 1050 CFM Holley Dominator carburetor. This one is an XP model with really cool features, including the fact that it's aluminum, which has merit. It's significantly lighter than the old zinc models. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that this is not some boutique frou-frou custom tuner magic guy carburetor. That is Holley straight out of the box. Next, we've got this 1-inch carburetor spacer here, which we're going to test in the episode. We'll show you all about that. The intake manifold is an Edelbrock Super Victor 2 for a tall deck big block like this one. I really want to point out, this manifold is not touched as far as custom porting. It is right out of the box. So now, it all comes down to the moment of truth for me. We're gonna put it on the dyno. We're gonna show you how Brule sort of warms up into tuning and getting the final number for an engine like this. And I'm gonna cross my fingers that it makes more than 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. Well, guys, there's a lot of ways to make 1,000 horsepower these days, but I know that you love NA power.
Absolutely.
And big block Chevys.
Oh, my favorite.
He loves big block Chevys, and I want to see your excitement level Freiburger.
I have been waiting for this for a long time. I am super stoked about it. So I have to reveal that Brule is the one who talked me into the single 4-barrel.
Really?
I wanted the tunnel ram. He's like, oh no, it'd be really cool to make the number with a single 4-barrel. So.
Well, because it was going to be too easy with a tunnel ram.
So if it doesn't make it, I'm blaming you.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Oh, wow.
Well, you saw that coming. Why else do you think I would have set that up?
I know, you just really, like, phew,
So it's
right
all
on
on
Brule.
Right there.
My engine, my responsibility, I suppose.
Wait, what?
He's really trying to swallow your 582.
Yeah.
What's happening here?
So the goal is 1,000 horsepower here, and Steve ran it enough to make sure it wasn't going to kick a rod. And so we still have timing adjustments, jetting adjustments, and after that I would like to fiddle around with cam timing, carb spacer, whatever it takes. All right, we'll fire it up. Okay. We'll sit out here anxiously.
I can't wait to see it.
All right, I'm all anxious. This is going to be our initial baseline to find out what kind of power this thing makes.
Anxiety?
Well, yeah.
Power anxiety or blow-up anxiety?
Oh, power anxiety. I'm not worried about blow-up anxiety. After all this drama, it better make the number by the end of the episode. Yeah, so we're looking at 11.3 to 11.5 to 1 air-fuel ratio. It made 977.6 horsepower at 7,000 RPM, so off my goal there. And we ran the thing through peak torque, which the torque curve is like dead flat. Basically 775 to 3. Yeah. We won't know until we run it all the way through a full sweep. Yeah. Exactly.
What I would do next is put timing in it because the air-fuel ratio is still very safe. So we can see if it responds to the timing, right. And then we'll look at the carburetor and make some choices there.
And it's my responsibility to set timing because it's my motor. So if it slips to like 42 degrees and the pistons leave the building, then it becomes my fault. So red lines are 32 degrees of timing, black lines are 36 degrees. Does it make you want to put 2 more in it?
I'm hesitant just knowing this cylinder head and combustion chamber, but we've got good gas in it.
Yeah.
So we can go another 2, and I don't think it's going to show much, but then we know, and we can go back.
For the record, right now, 987 horsepower. We think the timing helped. So I'm going to go tickle 2 degrees into that thing, and we'll see if it does better. .38 degrees of ignition timing, at least by my eyeball, says 991.6 horsepowers and 773 pound-feet of torque. We got to overlay it to make sure that it's like everything that we hope it is.
Well, I am reasonably comfortable saying.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Picked up 6.
Wow. Yeah, it was a good jump.
And it did that twice in a row.
Exactly.
So it tells me it's maybe not done.
Got to go there. I mean, 40 degrees of timing would be really hard to believe with something with such a flat chamber and not much of a dome on it. Should be pretty efficient, but we don't know where that timing pointer's lined up.
I will tell you what I would normally do.
Okay.
Is I would not do more timing now. Because when we go do some air-fuel ratio stuff and get it close, the timing might change at 2 or 3 tenths. I would head for air-fuel ratio, get that kind of dialed in, whether it be spacer, jetting, whatever happens there, and then try another degree or so when we're done with some air-fuel. Take the wholesale changes or the biggest changes first, and then just barely pick out.
Well, you're a dyno brain, I'm with that.
So, okay.
Yeah, so let's look at the fuel curve and decide what to do there. So the dyno has 2 feed lines for fuel, one of them to the front bowl, one of them to the second bowl, and they both have fuel veins in it. So what Steve's doing is looking at the fuel flow front and rear and deciding where he's going to make his change. And you're seeing that you've got more fuel in the rear right now than in the front, and because we want to lean it out a bit, he's going to take some jetting out of the back, and it should even out the 2 bowls. So before you say it, let Dulcich and I guess how many jets you're going to go. We don't know what's in it right now, but I'm going to guess that you're going to want to take out 4.
I was going to say 4, but I'm going to go with 5.
5
and a half.
5 and a half. All right, we're going to go jet this thing. So Brule has this set that I like to call the barbecue set because that wood handle looks to me like when you get the Weber grill and it comes with the like poker and stuff. And it's the special step on it right there so that it works on this style of jet extension that actually tucks in behind the jet. See, the jet extension is so that when you're on the drag strip and you launch and all the fuel goes to the back of the bowl, it's still picking up fuel. There's 2 kinds. There's a kind that threads into the hole and then the jet threads into that, and this kind where the jet just falls out like that. This jet is, ooh, that's a 94. Interesting. I was worried that it was going to be like a 96 or a 98. Usually when you have a really big jet, like let's say a 98 in it, you have to make a bigger change because when they approach 100, the changes get less and less sensitive. In other words, if it's 100 to begin with, you might have to change 6 to make it change. But with a 94 in it, we can change 4 and make it change. What was the calling from Brule?
89.
89, so he's going to move 5.
Yeah.
4 digits.
Yeah.
That was 1,000 plus.
Yeah.
That was the one.
Whew.
I saw those numbers just flying up, like counting
me
up.
too.
That was beautiful.
That was a big jump in power for that jetting change, actually.
Yeah, sometimes you might be surprised.
We were high-fiving each other out here, but I got to see the data, because if we're wrong, I can't tell you what the collapse in my mood will be if it made 999 on the data.
I am 100% confident we're not going to ruin your mood.
Okay, good. Yes, we got it. 1,005.9 horsepower, pretty much with out-of-the-box parts on gasoline and a single 4-barrel.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That's why this was so much fun.
Yeah, and it's going to get better from here, I hope.
Yeah.
There's our curve, 782.1 pound-feet of torque, 1,005.9 horsepower. Look how flat this torque curve is, which is why it makes the power, because the roll-off is not as steep as you would see with something with a worse cylinder head.
You know, we've talked about this percentage thing a number of times. I wanted to show Steve Dulcich kind of what happened. 781, so we'll say what, 78 horsepower would be a 10% drop?
723.
So it's 60?
Wow.
So 60,
So it's
which
8%.
is less than it. Yeah, it's 8% roughly.
And that's not even with the tricks.
Right.
Yeah, and what Steve's talking about here is how much of torque do you lose from peak torque to peak horsepower, and putting that in percentage terms. Normally with most engines you'll see 88 to 91%. 91 being a really good engine because it's not dropping off torque that fast. But on this particular engine, we're seeing something in the area of what, 6 or 7% drop off between those two numbers. So that is an engine that hangs on and continues making power upstairs.
Can we actually look at the change that made on the graph of fuel to fuel? Oh, look at that. That is just a jetting change. That's 5 jet sizes in the secondary.
Holy cow.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, from 991 to 1,006. I had said to him, he's like, you know, this is gonna pick up to onesie, twosies, threesies. It's not gonna actually hit 4 digits. Wrong.
Some engines are really sensitive to jetting and timing, and other ones just go, I don't care. This one obviously is sensitive to change.
Well, how rich is it? Let's look at what your sensor actually tells us. That was a huge change. It's still running 11.9 to 12.0, which normally I think on this we would call good, but what if it actually wants a little less than that?
Yeah.
So intuition is leading us towards not jetting it again, but installing a 1-inch tapered combo carburetor spacer. I'll show you what that's all about. Here's the plan, a 1-inch spacer, we call this a tapered combo. You can see that it is a 4-hole on top, but flip it over and it tapers down to open. So it's got more plenum area. Theoretically, it gives a better drivability, more signal to the booster. We don't know. We're just hoping it makes more power. Charlie Sheen?
Winning!
Let's see by how much. And with the spacer, our new power peak is 1,014.7 horsepower, and we picked up a little bit of torque, 786. Yeah. Can we look at the overlay and find out how much that spacer actually helped and why? We should look at the AFR as well. Wow. Okay, we're gonna name this engine Mikey, because Mikey likes it. No matter what you do to it, Mikey likes it.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how responsive this thing is to changes.
The red lines here are before the spacer, black lines are after, and our reaction is the fact that it picked up everywhere instead of just at the top, and that it's that big of a gain.
Well, I don't know that it changed the AFR that much, and kind of part of the initial thinking was...
It didn't.
Yeah.
Typically the open leans it out, which I explained to the audience. This time it just didn't. Maybe it's because of that tapered combo design. We don't know, but look at that. Ignore that because that's really not a big change. I mean, that's 0.2 of a ratio right there, which tells you the air-fuel ratio is the same.
This is at a point where I would try the timing again. Since the fuel made a significant difference, go back to 2 degrees.
Man, this is fun just whittling away at the thing. I mean, we're down into just looking at 5, 6, 7 horsepower, but still. I'm gonna go put 2 degrees in this thing.
Whoa.
It didn't hate it.
Whoa.
I'll tell you that. What just happened, Steve?
It made more power, Dave.
Yes, it did. So let's look at the curve, because it liked it again. Wow, 1,020.3 horsepower, 788 pound-feet of torque. We cannot hurt this thing. Let's have a look at what it was before the timing, 38 degrees. Boom.
Ooh.
Yeah, it just keeps growing. It's not even really narrowing. It's happening later, but the gap is not narrowing.
That's pure timing.
So right now, we're looking at 1,020.3 horsepower, which is really cool. But you had one last trick up your sleeve.
Actually, VP makes a couple of different oxygenated fuels, and we have used Q16 here on a number of occasions. It's really more prominent in the drag boat racing community than it is in NHRA. It's a little more expensive, and you have to service the engine, maybe drain it between races, that sort of thing. For whatever reason, drag boat guys are willing to. But what I can tell you is what we normally see is normally 2% gain.
So we're going to go pour in the Q16, or they are while I'm waiting here.
Okay.
Whoa, 1,038.9 horsepower, 797 pound-feet of torque, almost 800.
Yeah.
What a sweet curve this thing makes, too.
Yeah.
Let's overlay it with the gasoline.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Man, that's a lot.
That's huge. And it's everywhere in the curve, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ooh, and look at that, 7,700 RPM. It definitely rolled over there. It's making peak at 74 right now when you actually carry it all the way out.
Yeah.
But man, that's a shrieking big block.
Yes,
Kind of fun, huh?
Yeah, that's totally cool. Am I allowed to call it 1,040?
I'll give you that one. Yeah,
Am I
it's
allowed?
within 1 horsepower.
All right, we have 1,040 horsepower big block.
You know, I'd call it 1,040.
I know you would. It's only 1.1 horsepower away from that. Here's the thing that I've really thought through as I've sort of been through the process of this engine over the past many months is there's a lot of ways to get 1,000 horsepower these days. There's fewer ways to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. And I think what I've honed in on here is this is the easiest. I've seen 400 cubic inch Clevelands make 1,000 horsepower NA. If you're willing to spend a fortune on oiling, induction, cylinder heads, and 12,000 RPM, you can do it. But this ultimately is not a custom engine. Everything on it is off the shelf. It bolts together a little bit more difficult than a regular engine, but not much.
Yeah, you've got to do some more checking and measuring, valve to piston clearance, those things, just to ensure that you don't have any issues. But realistically, we never left this shop assembling it.
Right.
Right.
There's no super custom milling. There's no trick porting work.
No.
The heads are right out of the box. That intake is right out of the box. Carburetor. The only thing I recall doing that was super annoying was I had to grind the back of the belt drive cover. But you got to do that every single time you use a belt drive.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're just lucky.
So there's nothing custom on it. This is all off-the-shelf aftermarket parts. And what makes it easy is the 582 cubic inches and the fact that it's the bigger bore and the shorter stroke.
Yeah.
Some 582s are like a 4.560 bore and a 4.5 inch stroke, and this has only got a 4.375 stroke, which I think helps with RPM and the oiling.
The oiling issue is the reason I like the shorter strokes. The big strokes in a wet sump get to be kind of problematic.
Yeah.
That's why I love this thing.
Well, if you want big power, the big block Chevy's just the go-to power plant, in my opinion, every time. So, I mean, this just proves it. NA, 1,000 plus horsepower, bolt together combo.
Yep.
Nice
Dart,
job.
K1, Comp Cams, Holly, Moroso, they all make it happen. I don't know if you'll see 1,000 horsepower NA again anytime soon, but if we do it, you will see it on Engine Masters.
Oh. I think it liked it. I know. I just can't contain myself, though, Freiberger.
I know.
You know, honestly, when I'm watching the numbers roll on the dyno screen as we're going through a poll, I'm like, go, go, go.
I know.
Do you do the same thing?
Yeah, and every time I see a number flash, I'm like, oh, it did blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then we look at the curve, I'm like, oh. This time on Engine Masters, how much power are you giving up to look this cool with your header? You know what, Engine Masters, we take horsepower very seriously. And in many episodes, you'll find us finding that nuance that just gets that very last edge of performance. And other times we test a bunch of goofy headers just because we can. And that's what this episode is gonna be all about. See, sometimes you choose an exhaust header for cosmetic purposes instead of really for performance. And on this episode, we're gonna find out what you're actually paying in horsepower in order to have that kind of looks. We got tri-wise, we got Lakes pipes, we got Zoomies, we got gasser headers, we got T-bucket headers. But of course, the engine that we're using as a baseline is our traditional 383 small block Chevy, because let's be honest, this is the engine configuration that's probably in most of the cars that are gonna pick headers like this. It's our regular old 383. You've seen us run it dozens of times. It makes about 450 horsepower. So the headers that we're gonna test will begin with the T-bucket header. Now, I call it the T-bucket header so that you can sort of visualize it as a goofy cosmetic header. But in truth, this is what we call our dyno header. We have tested it. This setup makes more power than a typical under chassis header of the same size, which is why we always use it on the dyno. It's got that really long straight segment right out of the ports that tends to make horsepower. So that's gonna be our baseline. These are a 1 3/4 inch tube, and they've got a welded on collector extension. And you'll see us using collector extensions on all the different headers. So that is gonna be the bogey to beat. Next up, we are going to try the Tri-Y. I wouldn't put this in the category of a cosmetic goofy header, but it is a design that has been around for a long, long time that many people want to understand and know about, because there are so many claims that this design makes a ton of low-end torque. Now, to be fair, they're typically used in applications like tow trucks and things with much smaller, lower-powered engines than what we're dealing with here, but I still wanted to find out. These are automatically gonna have a disadvantage because they have a 1 5/8 inch primary tube. However, you will note why this is called a Tri-Y. This has a pair of cylinders that are coupled into one Y right here. Then this pair of cylinders is coupled into that Y right there. Then it goes into a 2-inch tube, and all four are coupled right here into the third Y, hence Tri-Y. I have no idea what this is gonna do. This is a Doug's header for an application of a GMG body. Let's call it a Monte Carlo or something like that. It also has the smallest collector of anything in our test. It's 2.5 inches, but we're gonna run it with a little extension. So that's the Tri-Y. Now we get into the real decorative stuff. This is a Sanderson header that is called a Lakes type header typically. Sometimes it's called a Limefire header. The design is based on the drive shaft from a 35 or 36 Ford, which is tapered like this. So back in the 50s, hot rodders would build their headers out of an old drive shaft. Pretty interesting. The main tubes are all 1 5/8 and they feed directly into that cone-shaped deal. In case you're wondering, we do have the bypass capped off right here because we didn't want the flow to be interrupted at the end and possibly hamper performance. So that's the Lakes header. Next up, the Zoomie. So Zoomie headers are really short headers that have no collector whatsoever. You'll often see these on dragsters that have more of an up sweep design or sometimes a low and down sweep design. These ones right here are from Schonenfeld headers. They are dirt cheap and they are 1 3/4 inch tubes. It's gonna be really interesting to find out what kind of power it makes with no collector whatsoever. And finally, the header of my personal choice, the Fender well header. This is a unit for a Tri-5 Chevy. It would be in what most people call a gasser style. So you can see, you remove your inner fender well, bolt that to the engine, it goes up and out right behind the tire. I suspect this is pretty solid because it's got those really long straight tubes on it. And we're gonna end up testing this with and without a collector. And again, that's a 1 3/4 inch tube. So, there you go, the roundup of cosmetic headers, and we're gonna kick it all off with our 3D3 wearing the sprint car tubes. This one's just for fun, bunch of goofy headers. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna learn much other than what happens when you install weird headers on your rat rod. So step one are the headers that we would normally call dyno headers, but in truth, those are like sprint car or maybe T-bucket headers.
Yeah, that's actually the way they're described.
Well, I'm convinced this is going to be our best header, so it's probably the appropriate baseline.
I hope it's not.
Really?
Yeah, but I think it probably will be.
You're in for a
I know
surprise?
what you're rooting for.
Yes.
I already know. Fender well Dave.
Exactly. Okay, Steve, give us a baseline.
Okay, here we go.
So this is going to be our baseline with our dyno headers, which are also like T-bucket headers. Okay, let's have a look. Here's our baseline power. Not a big surprise considering that the last time we ran this, it had a single plane intake manifold and it was making 470. The dual plane hacked it down a little bit. It's making 451.4 horsepower, 5,900 RPM, and the torque is 470.9 at 4,200 RPM. It is what it is. The question is, the only question is, which header do you want to run first? Do you want to go from presumed worst to presumed best?
I want to get the tri-wise out of the way.
Because those are the presumed worst.
They just irritate me.
Okay, tri-Y headers coming up.
That was a good answer. Oh, that was noisy. Oh, okay. Take her away, Troy.
Look what I found. Here's a shocker. I found some 2.5-inch tube collector extensions here at Westech. There'd be no reason to actually run this in real life. But I'm gonna throw them on here just to give these headers some chance of making a ton of low-end torque. Because as we found out in a prior test, collector extensions make a huge difference in low end.
Okay, let's go. This is gonna be great.
Are you still irritated by them?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, well, let's have a look.
You're gonna be more irritated when you see the numbers.
I think so too.
Not that bad.
467.5 pound-feet of torque, 445.3 horsepower. So the peaks are surprising me a little bit. But let's look at the curve compared with the T-bucket header. Best possible header versus tri-Y. Here it goes. Ooh. So the black lines are the tri-Ys, down as you would expect, and the red is the dyno header. Kind of, yeah, you saw a little bit of a dip right there, which is interesting because the tri-Y is supposed to be famous for making power right there, and it does not. I'm surprised that it matches throughout here, and I'm surprised that the peaks, how much are they down? 5 numbers? 5 or 6 numbers.
T-bucket headers are definitely better.
But by nowhere near the margin I expected.
No, they aren't as bad as I thought.
I can't be as irritated by the tri-Y as I wanted to be.
I know, and I'm disappointed that I can't be either.
Right. How about you? What's your irritation level?
Oh, 0. I kind of like it, actually. Oh, look at that. It's right there with the dyno header.
So you don't care whatsoever. You've got a little bit of a rash. Okay.
Admittedly, that's pretty decent if you can hang with the dyno header that close.
Not bad. So what do you want to do next?
We should do yours next.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No, we're going to end with those. No.
Well, you're outvoted, really.
Right. Yeah, you know, you're right. You and I both know that this is not a democracy. So I might as well just go put the Zoomie.
Okay, let's go bolt on.
No, I was thinking Lakes pipes.
Oh, we
I forgot about the Lakes pipes.
See?
Those are awesome.
Right. It all comes back to the front.
Those are awesome.
All right, let's go get the Lakes pipes and throw them on here. Make the tri-Ys look great. Okay, it was terrible, but do you care?
No, it's just so cool looking, I don't care.
It doesn't matter. It's a decorative item. It made 445.6 pound-feet of torque, 425.8 horsepower, way down. Let's see how bad it really is if we compare it to the dyno headers, which are like the greatest. Oof. That is terrible. Clearly, the black line is the Lakes header, red line is the dyno header. This is kind of interesting.
But it's good for drivability.
Yeah, it made more torque below 3,500 RPM. That's kind of a surprise. But did you hear at the top?
Oh, it labored hard trying to rev up to red line.
Yeah, it's like it really didn't want to run. It was like, oh! And I think that's because of the way the three pipes enter. They're not dead 90s, but remember we learned on the single exhaust how bad it hurts
90.
flow when you just 90 the pipe like that?
Yeah, that's almost 90, particularly the ones right in the center there.
Yeah, that's just going to kill it.
I think they're just cool, that's all.
But the Zoomies are cooler?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to the Zoomies next.
Steve-O, are you ready for the raciest looking headers we've got?
Those are my favorites.
The Zoomies. These are gonna sound terrible, they'll kill power, but they'll look the coolest.
We need a header gasket.
Right, we're firing up the Zoomies to burn the paint off of them and hopefully shoot fire. First of all, the important stuff, I think the Zoomies win for fire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The Lakes pipes were pretty good, but nothing like this.
Yeah, and some style points too, you have to admit, right?
Yeah. No, that definitely got like rat rod style points.
I was feeling a lot like a funny car driver. Handbrake,
With
throttle,
450
flames.
horsepower.
Well, you know, a new funny car driver.
Okay, let's see what kind of power they made. There we go, 457.8 pound-feet and 440.7 horsepower, and I'm surprised how nice the curve
Pretty
looks.
curved.
Really nice.
Yeah, that's kind of a shocker.
It was pretty good way down at the bottom at 3,000. It was still
Surprising.
pretty good. Yeah, for being so short.
Here we go, compare it to the dyno header. There we go, black lines are the Zoomies, red lines are the excellent dyno header, and I'm surprised at this right here that something with no collector at all made more low-end torque.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked.
That's confusing.
Yeah, that goes to show you never can predict the results sometimes.
Never say always is what that means, yeah. I would have said they'll kill low end and make the same peak but be down throughout the curve. That's what I would have guessed before we started, but obviously it killed power everywhere except for below 3,500 RPM.
Who knows?
Who knows?
The bizarro world of
This bizarro world.
It still wins for cool, though.
No, the coolest is what we're going to do next, which is the fender well for the gassers.
Oh, no.
Which are going to make the most power.
And look cool doing it.
Or humiliate me.
Well, we'll find out in
That's
a
likely.
couple of minutes here.
All right, you want to cool this down, and I'll go grab the Doug's gasser header. So far, I have to say, every one of these headers has had pretty good bolt fitment. You know, typically there's one that just doesn't want to go in, but these have all been easy. Have you guys run into a bad one?
No, you picked headers that are really pretty easy to install all the way around.
I scienced that just for you. Ready? Ooh, I like these.
David always has the most fun on an episode when he gets to pick the winning part first.
How do you know it wins?
Well, because you picked it.
Once again, you can never say always.
Yeah, that's a dangerous
It's a
statement.
lesson I often forget.
Yeah, it's a dangerous statement in engine technology.
The numbers, please, Mr. Brule.
Yeah.
Yeah, looked good, especially coming on the roll in. It looked really good.
We'll do it.
I like watching you do this.
Yeah, 457 pound-feet of torque 452.6 horsepower. The Zoomies had a nicer looking curve.
Yeah.
They had none of this.
Yeah.
I didn't even see this.
Yeah.
I saw this number when I rolled in, that kind of drove past, and I saw this one. I obviously saw that, but.
How about overlay it on the dyno headers? It's always the answer. Dyno headers in red and my Fender well units in black. Boy, did they throw away a lot of power, but they made the same from about 4,700 up.
And we're a little bit right at the bottom. They were better, but torque-wise,
Just destroyed.
destroyed.
You know,
I know how to fix this. Maybe.
Maybe.
maybe. I know where you're going with it with the extensions, but what I'm more interested in than anything is when the extensions are on it, is it going to actually lower this and pick this up? Is it in this area right there, is it going to do something?
I think
Stopped
so.
pretending to know. He's pretending to know.
Bad move.
Bad move.
We should go put extensions on and see what
think it's a good
happens with
idea.
that.
I think, yeah, what we're gonna do next is put header collector extensions on there, which is gonna do something down here. We just don't know what.
Yeah.
Collector extension makes this thing a beast.
Quite a difference.
Look at that. 471.8 pound-feet to torque, 450.4 horsepower, and let's have a look at it without the collector extensions with the same header. Wow! That is just nothing more than bolting on an 18-inch tube on the end of the header. The red line is without the collector extensions, black is with, and look, once again, it's doing something weird down here.
Did exactly what I had hoped it would do, is lose some, and it's that whole.
It is, it's crazy. I mean, we found this out when we did the whole episode about collector extensions.
Yeah.
But man, that is a lot of meat right there. That makes the car go faster or do better burnouts anyway.
It makes it do a lot of stuff better.
Wow, that's great.
And picked up the peak torque number, a big number too.
Yeah.
This is huge. That's going to be the thing that everyone looks at. This is the most interesting to me. A collector extension that lost power below 3,200.
I think we need to go cut it shorter. Why?
We've done that episode.
It made sense though, it worked.
But where do you end up with it?
I know.
You know, then it ends up someplace in between. But this is what I was kind of.
Well, no, I'm more thinking that it adds it up here back. But you don't know.
We're talking 2 horsepower. That could be.
Yeah.
Just it flip-flop those completely. I mean, it just swap.
Which made the curve kind of more similar to our dyno headers.
Yeah. In fact, I bet when we look at that.
We need to look at that. Okay, so pull off the one without the collector extensions. And right now we're going to compare the Fender well header with collector extensions to our dyno headers, or what we've been calling T-bucket or sprint car headers. There you go. The Fender well headers make more torque than Steve's favorite dyno headers.
Actually,
look at that.
Got a better average over the curve.
Yes,
I mean,
it
it's
does.
almost identical.
Actually, I think I have new dyno headers.
These are them.
I think so.
I know, except for that they're horrible to work around.
Oh, they are.
Because they burn you right in the giblets. But aside from that,
You can't get to anything, but they really are good on power.
man, look at that.
Wow.
That is awesome. Black lines are my Fender well headers, and the red is like our world's greatest dyno header that we use every single time. And they absolutely match above 4,000 RPM, and from 3,000 to 4,000, the Fender wells make more power, and then there's still a weird little wobble right here where if we pulled it even lower.
It's so
that's the entry
insignificant
number
there.
on the dyno
Yeah.
also, so you don't even know.
I really didn't think what I saw was going to be this much better than the dyno header, because this number looked pretty similar. The peak number looked pretty similar over there, and it was almost identical up here. So I thought it was going to be kind of an overlay, but boy, there's a chunk of meat there.
What I want to know now is on these Fender well headers, the collector extension always needs to turn and go back down below the tire. I wonder how much just that turn makes a difference. What I do know, though, is it's worth having it on there even with the turn.
So it doesn't blow all the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it doesn't blow everything up. You couldn't put it on the car like this. The collector extension would almost be dragging the ground.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so you gotta get it level with the rocker panel.
I don't think having that turn is going to make any difference.
Or if it does, it's not as bad as no collector extension at
yeah,
all.
certainly. So
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I don't see it making a lot of difference if it's a nice transition and that same length. So, no, that's impressive. That's a good header.
Yeah, it sure is.
Can we overlay every header that we've tested here just for grins? Now we've got a graph here that's sort of confusing to look at. It's got every header that we have tested here. Let me go through the colors for you. Black is going to be our best ones, the Fender well headers with the extensions on it. Then we've got red is the Zoomies, blue is the Tri-Y, green is the Lake type header, and magenta is our standard baseline dyno header. Guys, thoughts?
The only thing I see is, with the exception of the Tri-Y, every other header that makes more down low makes less up top. And conversely, the ones that make the most up top make the least down low.
Look at what else we saw here, which is that the Tri-Y, advertised forever as making tons of low-end torque, did not.
It's the worst.
It's the worst. And the Zoomie, with the shortest tubes and no collector, which is not supposed to make any low-end torque, did.
You know, I think it's fair to say, too, if we put a camshaft in here with another 20 degrees duration and a wider exhaust spread, different lobe separation angle,
it all changes.
We could we're going to see different results. So,
Yeah.
so specific.
Yeah, I mean, my takeaway is there's power on the table, obviously, from the spread of the various curves, but these are just funky headers that you pick for a particular purpose. So, you know, it just depends on what you want for your own car or whatever you're trying to do. I mean, you're not going to interchange them as equivalent kinds of parts, right?
No, I was just curious. They're all novelty headers.
Right.
None of these are ones that you're going, ooh, I'm going to race. How can I fine-tune this with my lake pipe? You know, nobody's doing that. These are all just for decoration, with the exception of the victorious and dominant Fender well header.
Oh, yeah, if you had a Tri-5.
He's completely discounting the sprint headers, just like they don't exist.
They're junk. Did you see how much power they threw away?
Yeah, that torque, Steve-O. I mean,
Yeah.
how can you excuse that?
Okay, you win.
But on a bigger engine with more power, they might make that torque, but they're not going to make the top end. So I guess what we're saying is the results will vary. But in general, you can get the idea here. I think the Lakes pipes are, if you took the Lakes pipes versus a chassis header in virtually any application, they're going to kill power.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I think the same is true with the Zoomies.
You know what's fair, though? Is sometimes it's not about power. Sometimes it's just about being cool. And the Lake pipes and the Zoomies are cool.
So it comes back to, you look marvelous, as we do every time on Engine Masters.
You look marvelous.
As I look into my eyes.
As I look into my eyes,
I look marvelous.
That's funny.
Okay.
That was good. That was a good come off the looking good. That was kind of fun. Well, you know, that was a perfect out. That was just perfect.
That was a good one. Marvelous.
This time on Engine Masters, light makes might. You know that making your car weigh less makes it go faster. But do lightweight engine components make more power? We're here to find out. It should come as no surprise to you that I bench race engines in my head all the time. And when I'm shopping for dream stuff, I always think to myself, should I get that 38-pound crankshaft instead of the 42? Should I get the aluminum connecting rods instead of the steel? Should I get the tiny damper? Should I get the aluminum flywheel instead of the heavy steel one? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Do lightweight engine components actually make more power? Do they help the engine rev faster? Well, I couldn't really build entire engines with different components to figure this out. So let me tell you exactly how we're gonna do it. We're gonna use this small block Chevy, and I'll tell you all about what that is. And we're gonna start with this 10-pound harmonic balancer. Then we're gonna change it to this 1 pound aluminum drive hub. It's meant for circle track cars, just to be able to run accessories and things. It has no damping ability, and it's super lightweight. Next up, we're gonna take the steel flywheel and the big dyno drive hub that weighs 44 pounds, and we're gonna change it up for this 2 pound little drive hub. And then we're gonna run the engine and find out, does it actually make more power to ditch all that weight? And that's a big, big chunk of weight. Probably more than you can actually eliminate in your reciprocating assembly in your engine, but it's gonna give you a scale to see how much this is really worth it. And to find out, we're gonna accelerate this engine at 2 different rates on the dyno. 300 RPM per second and 600 RPM per second, and compare the two. We'll explain more about that once I sit down with the Steves. So, what is the engine that we're using for this big test? This is a Westech mill that's been around, and it's got 10,000 dyno pulls on it. We really are impressed with the reliability of this thing. It is a Dart SHP 372 cubic inch small block Chevy. The whole short block you can buy from Dart as is. They run fantastic. Up in the top end, we've got AFR, Airflow Research 195 street heads. We have an Edelbrock dual plane RPM air gap intake manifold. We got a 750 Holley XP. The camshaft in this thing is from Comp Cams. It's a hydraulic roller with solid roller lifters on it. You can see that trick in an earlier episode of Engine Masters. And its duration is 242 at 50 on the intake. So this thing should make neighborhood of 500 horsepower. We're gonna put it on the dyno right now with these heavy parts on it, and second, change it up to the light stuff and see what happens. All right, we got our 377 on the dyno for the baseline. You've tested this thing 10,000 times.
A few.
So there's gonna be no surprises here.
No.
The thing I want to describe to the audience at this point is, how are we gonna tell the difference in power between the heavy components and the lightweight components? It's more than just straight horsepower on the curve.
It's going to show up in one of 2 ways, acceleration rate or horsepower. And since we have a controlled acceleration rate, we're going to look at a power difference. So what I'm going to do is accelerate the engine at 2 different RPMs, 300 and 600 RPM per second.
Like we just threw together the COVID 350 and the 56
Right.
Chevy. How fast did that thing tack in the car?
Oh man, it had the aluminum flywheel and it was just zinged up there like crazy. But I mean, you've done drag racing, right? And you've done land speed racing. And it's kind of an analogy what we're doing right here. I mean, land speed racing, weight of the car is not as much of a factor as in drag racing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, you're not overcoming inertia, which is what we're talking about here, but even more specifically about land speed racing versus drag racing. In land speed, like at 250 miles an hour, I'll gain 300 RPM in 30 seconds, whereas in drag racing, the engine's going, yip, yip, you know, it's revving fast. That's basically what we're gonna duplicate on the dyno here. Is 300 RPM per second is a slower than realistic acceleration rate, and 600 is, I don't even know what the scale is in a real car.
I think even 600 is slower than first gear in a Pro Stock car.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, something that extreme.
But 600 is actually a pretty quick acceleration rate. That's actually a common test acceleration rate for comp eliminator Pro Stock style engines.
Okay, so what we're gonna see when you go in the room is, first you're gonna run it at 300 RPM per second, then you'll reestablish your temperatures and everything, and then you'll run it at 600, and we'll look at both plots.
Exactly.
Cool, we're ready.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, don't blow it up, Steve.
That's happened enough today.
This is it. This is our baseline with a regular weight flywheel and a normal harmonic balancer. So that was our first test at an acceleration rate of 300 RPM per second, and the power numbers are 500.4 horsepower at 6,600 RPM, and it made 466.2 pound-feet of torque at 4,500 RPM. And now we're gonna find out how that changes when we accelerate it twice as fast at 600 RPM per second. It's always it's interesting how much power it loses when you do that.
It was more than I would have expected, I think,
like it,
just
yeah.
judging by the numbers flashing by. But I like the higher acceleration rate for the sound of that thing zinging up. But
Yeah.
I think I like the power numbers at the slower rate
I know.
better.
You always like the best power number regardless
Yes.
of whether it's realistic in the actual
Oh,
world.
yeah, who cares about that?
That was 600 RPM per second, and our peak numbers have changed. Now we're looking at 457.7 pound-feet of torque at 4,300 RPM, and the horsepower dropped to 488.3 at 6,500 RPM. Now, the data part of the program. Right here, we've got the black line representing 300 RPM per second acceleration rate, which would be the standard that you normally see on the show. The red line is 600 RPM per second. So what are you seeing?
I see that it takes a whole lot more power to accelerate something quickly. Like I said, it's going to show it in one of two ways, either an acceleration rate if you're not controlling it, or power if you are. So we actually went from 300 to 600, and the power went way down. And basically what that tells us is this is the engine's inability to accelerate its own mass. The faster you try to accelerate, the more power loss there actually is shown.
You?
Yeah. I'm surprised by how much it is, really. I've never done this specific test and looked at it, and
It's big.
It's big, yeah. It's really big.
Okay, very cool. So let's go change it from Cadillac mode to bicycle mode by removing the flywheel and the damper.
Oh, you're going to love what I did for bicycle mode.
I can't wait to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
This is going to be simple. Let's go.
All right. Whoa, Steve-O. I was expecting maybe an aluminum flywheel or something, but you just have a drive hub.
Well,
Where'd you get that?
we wanted to reduce the weight, so
That's
On-
reducing it.
on my old race boat, we had these PTOs. It's an 1 3/8 10 spline. And so thinking about this test, I thought, let's try and make it as light as possible. So I really wouldn't recommend doing this as a normal practice, but for one dyno session, you know, a few pulls, I think we're okay with it. It basically has no dampening at all. You may want to take a look at this thing. It's
And the center
it's
of
nothing
mass
but a
is-
steel hub. There is no center mass. We basically removed the whole drive hub, you know, the drive plate,
Yeah.
the whole flywheel. We've removed everything. All there is splines in the back of the crank.
Well, that's going to be good.
Yeah.
Good thinking.
Now we've got the lightweight components on the engine, and we're going to go for the base 300 RPM per second pull.
Now, how can you tell that relay likes it?
I know, because he's playing with it. How come it just makes the engine so much more wicked?
It just does. It
It's
sounds
cool.
way better, too.
Yeah.
Dude.
Makes good power.
Yeah, it does.
That's cool.
Wow.
That's really cool.
That's a heck of a lot.
Thing is, it's 44 pounds off the back.
I know, but
Yeah.
to me, it seemed like it was better at the hip, too.
Yeah, it
which
seemed like
it's
it was.
static right there.
That was 300 RPM per second, our baseline with the lightweight components on the engine, and we made 478.9 pound-feet of torque at 4,400 RPM and 516.2 horsepower at 6,600 RPM. Next up, the faster run, 600 RPM per second with the lightweight components. So on our faster 600 RPM per second pull, we made 474.7 pound-feet of torque at 4,600 RPM and 511.4 horsepower at 6,500.
So 300 light.
Yeah, the first thing we should look at is the test we just did at 300 RPM per second with the lightweight components, or should I say the non-existent components?
That makes them light.
Right. They are vapor.
Yeah, it's
So they're came up quite a bit. New power peak for this engine though, 516.2. It's never been there before, at least not with this particular combo.
Right.
Now this is going to be the comparison of the heavyweight parts versus the super lightweight parts. Wow. Train tracks, absolute, the same except for right off the hit.
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing. So if it wasn't obvious, the red lines are with the full weight flywheel and drive plate, 44 pounds worth, and with a 10-pound damper versus the components that weigh a couple pounds each.
I'm glad you decided to put this kind of like on the test schedule.
Yeah.
We've done this before, just kind of like with the acceleration rate stuff, but we've never taken the time to put that small of a balancer, or hub, I should say, on it, and actually really try and lighten the components. And taking all that flywheel stuff off, I mean, it sounded like a sprint car when I touched the throttle.
It was great. Yeah.
It sounded like a mini top fueler the way you could whack it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, it was great. So I did the math on the difference between these two. We lost 12.7 pound-feet and 15.8 horsepower by adding heavyweight parts, or we gained those numbers by going to lightweight parts.
Light ones, yeah.
Yeah, and it looks to me like that's exactly the change within a spec at every point in the curve except for right here. Yeah, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Where do you find that?
Amazing. All right, let's have a look at 600 light versus 600 heavy. Wow.
That's even more.
Even bigger change when you're accelerating the engine faster. It hates it even more to have to carry all that dead weight. Wow. So I did the math on this also. The change is far greater. So at 300 RPM per second, the loss with the heavier parts was 12.7 pound-feet. It's 17 with the faster acceleration rate. And the horsepower changes from 15.8 to 23. Wow. So the faster you accelerate the engine, the worse it gets when you've got heavy components in the rotating and reciprocating assembly.
I mean, there's sections in here that are almost 30 horsepower.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? Yeah, like I say, we've done this before, but I've never seen gains like that. I've never worked that hard to get the weight off.
What's really interesting to me is not only that we showed the difference in power, but that we showed the faster you accelerate the engine, the worse it gets.
Yes, yes.
That's really my key takeaway at this point.
In the car, it's going to vary a lot more than that because you're going to be accelerating sometimes a lot faster than 600 RPM per second.
Yeah, I think for sure. And the other thing that's interesting is when we saw you playing with the engine before it was running, you're doing the wah-bah, wah-bah. Yeah. It also comes down much faster.
You ought to see what happens when I hit the off switch.
It just ding off.
Half a rotation, it's boom.
Yeah, it's just
done.
Dead.
It starts easier, I swear.
Yeah. No, it did.
Yeah.
When you started, I was thinking through that, and it's because when it first starts and it's only got a couple cylinders hitting, it no longer has to overcome all of that stuff to get running. It just bam!
At first, I thought this can't be. But then I shut it off, and it was literally, I could barely touch the start button. Boom, boom, and it was running.
Totally.
So all of it.
It's wild.
You know, something else I was thinking was in the car, it would make more difference in first gear than it would in high gear.
Right, because of
faster
acceleration rate. But let's get into the real world downsides of it. First of all, we took 44 pounds off the flywheel alone. In the real world with a small block Chevy, steel flywheel is going to be about 30, 32, and aluminum's going to be about 15.
Okay.
So you're taking 15 pounds off.
Okay.
So, and then with the front damper, I don't know what the weight is on those, but you could go from a 6.5 to an 8-inch, and that's a difference. So I guess what I'm saying is that the scale in the real world for an engine like this is going to be smaller.
Sure. I mean, we were demonstrating what happens, but by the time you're done with a good piston and a lighter connecting rod and buying the 60-pound big block crank or the 43-pound small block crank, by the time you're done picking away, you've knocked 40 pounds out of it. You can take 30, 20 pounds out of the crankshaft in a lot of cases.
Right.
Which, don't forget, is also just weight off the car and weight off the nose of the car. So, yeah, I think you're going to have to go further to get this kind of gain on this engine in the real world than we actually did on the dyno. Because the other thing is, you don't even want to run this thing over and over because it's got no damping in the front whatsoever.
I don't like the idea of having no dampener in the front. I'm perfectly fine with like a little 6-incher as long as it has some sort of ability elastomer or something there to dampen it. But with nothing there, I've seen timing chains break because of no dampening. There's a reason sprint cars run gear drives.
Okay.
Because they have no dampening, and it will break timing chains. I've seen it happen with blower motors. So a lot of this stuff, you know, the jerking back and forth, crankshaft manufacturers will tell you to use the lightest balancer possible, typically is what they'll tell you, as long as it's a harmonic balancer. Crankshaft manufacturers don't like drive hubs like this.
No, of course not.
No. So, but it's just,
I get that.
like I say, it's just demonstration purposes.
I think it's also cause and effect. If you don't run a hub, the crankshaft is accelerating both directions more quickly than it would otherwise, which is also why it's breaking those timing sets.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
With more weight on it, it goes, oh, instead of, hama! And so it's changing direction much more slowly.
Again, that's what crankshafts hate, is they hate being at one speed and changing to another.
Right. Here's the other thing, though, and we were worried about this recently. We just put an aluminum flywheel on my 56 Chevy, and I was worried because if you have a dump truck, you don't want a light flywheel. You need the stored energy of a big, heavy flywheel. If you have a rock crawling Jeep and you want to chug along at 300 RPM crawling rocks, you don't want a light flywheel. You want the heaviest one that you can get.
Yeah.
But for the drag car that was lightweight with a 411 in the back and a stick, I went ahead and got the 15-pound flywheel, and I think it's helping me for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool. And it does a little bit of that wah-bah, kind of like this does.
You know, I grew up when we were using 50-pound flywheels in 288 cubic inch small blocks.
How did the horse pull that?
Well,
It took him a second.
we had 350 or 400 of them with the tunnel ramp, so. But you know, it's a 3,800-pound 56 Chevy or, you know, something, and with 288 cubic inches, it was not going to leave with an aluminum flywheel. So that stored energy is accurate when you talk about that.
Yeah, I guess I make that point really specifically so that you don't realize, hey, let me just get rid of my flywheel and go. You know what it makes me realize about automatic transmissions too, is that when you do drag race converters that get smaller and smaller, that's also an advantage. And when you have lockup converters and big, heavy billet units, like in a 4L80 that weigh a ton, that's also a downside.
You know, anything you're rotating takes power to do it. The smaller the circumference or the diameter distance from center, the less affected the engine is by that. So the flywheel that's 14 inches in diameter is going to be a huge deal. If it's something located, a drill mark that's located 1.5 inches off center of the crankshaft, isn't going to matter much.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the car, it doesn't end at the end of the crankshaft when you're going down the road or down the track, because you're
Drive
also
shaft,
turning the
wheels and
gears in the transmission, the main shaft, the counter shaft, all of that stuff. So, yeah.
Yep. I bet this makes a bigger difference on a big block with a big Hankin stroke than it does on a little small block, too.
It absolutely does.
And it makes more difference with higher RPM also.
Yep, all those things.
Like, ding.
Got us thinking.
Man, this is really cool. So, once again, more answers, more questions, more data, all the stuff that you get every time on
Engine Masters.
Do we have the hydraulic history?
Hydraulic, only do the manual.
Did you hear him when he said that?
Yeah.
He looked at you like you'd insulted him by saying hydraulic. Hydraulic? Not on my 372, you won't.
Yeah.
Did you see me?
Can you just
Like a young whippersnapper.
can you just do it one more time for close up?
This time on Engine Masters, what is the best header for boost? Spoiler alert, it's not this one. This time on Engine Masters, it's a twofer because we're gonna find out what the best header size is naturally aspirated on our 351 Ford, and then again when we're cramming a whole lot more air through it with boost. See, the thing that I want to figure out is if you're running naturally aspirated, does it maybe make best power with one size header? And then when it's blown and making a whole bunch more power, it requires a different header? And the way we're going to figure that out is with a standard small block Ford making 430 horsepower NA and 630 horsepower blown. So let's look at the specific motor that we are going to punish with boost and run a lot of headers across in this test. This engine in the bottom end is a bone stock 351 Ford. Cast crank, junk connecting rods, cast pistons, stock block, Nothing special about it. We've got a Comp Cam's hydraulic roller cam in it. It's 230 and 236 at 50. Up top, the key is the AFR 165cc inlet runner aluminum cylinder heads. Just FYI, we've tested these on this engine versus the larger 195s, and the 165s are just as good. It's amazing. We actually dig it. So those are the cheaper heads. Go ahead and buy them. Now up top, we've got the Edelbrock Victor Jr. single plane intake manifold on both combinations. We found out in prior testing that Victor Jr. on this engine actually makes more power everywhere than the dual plane Performer RPM that we would normally suggest. So that's why we got that on there. Now up top, naturally aspirated, we're going to be running a Holley 750 XP carburetor, and supercharged, it's going to have the Demon blow-through unit. Clearly, we will not have the blower on it for our naturally aspirated testing, and when we do go to supercharged power, it is going to have a ProCharger F1A 94 centrifugal blower, and it's going to be pretty awesome. So there's the combination NA and blown. What are we going to do with the headers? First up, Speedmaster 1 5/8 inch tubes. This is about the low end of a tube you're going to want to put on any V8. They make 1.5 for some applications, but honestly, you'd be a chump to use them. So 1 5/8. Next up, we have got our hooker headers, 1 3/4 inch tubes for the small block Ford. And you can see we've got a header extension bolted to this one. We will have that set up for every single one of the headers that we're going to test because we know that the collector extension makes bottom end power. So this is a 1 3/4 inch tube. Now the next header that we've got is bolted to the engine right now, and they're from Dynatech, and they are a stepped header from 1 3/4 inch for the first, 5 or 6 inches of the tube, and then it steps up to 1 7/8 inch. Now you may ask, why aren't you just running a full 1 7/8 inch header? The deal on the small block Ford exhaust bolt pattern is that the 2 bolts next to each port are really close together, and you typically cannot bolt on a header that's bigger than 1 3/4 without having what's called a spread pattern. There's 2 different spread patterns that they make for the small block Ford to put bigger and bigger headers on them. Unfortunately, AFR does not drill the 165 heads for that spread pattern, and that's why we had to use the stepped header that goes from 1 3/4 to 1 7/8. So there's the whole shebang. The first thing that we're gonna do is put the 351 on the dyno. We're gonna bolt it up with the Speedmaster 1 5/8 inch headers and move on from there. Just wait for the boost because it's really cool. Okay, guys, headers versus boost. How do you like the test?
I like it good.
Yeah? What's going to happen?
I don't even know where to go with that.
I can anticipate it, Freiberger.
You can?
Well, yeah, it's self-explanatory because with boost, you're going to be making more combustion and what else? More exhaust. So in my theory, more exhaust is going to demand more header.
Yep, that's my theory too. So I am coming into this with a preconceived notion that the biggest header is going to be the best with boost. What I'm hoping is that the biggest header actually loses a little torque NA.
Tilts the curve.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, basically what we're doing with the blower is increasing the size of the engine.
Yeah.
So bigger engines generally want bigger headers.
We're going to kick it off with the smallest headers, which is the Speedmaster 1 5/8 units, which I should clarify to the audience. Watch when this thing is running when Steve backs off of it because it shoots fire out the back. It has a really flimsy flange up against the head, and it's got a leak. And when you decelerate, it sucks oxygen, and the unburned gases in the pipe then go poof. So you'll see that happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
We tried fixing that, and there just wasn't any way.
There's no fixing it.
No.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll get rid of these headers quick if you would just go fire it up and give us a baseline. Our baseline numbers with those small headers are 415.1 pound-feet of torque at 4,900 RPM and 423.5 horsepowers at 5,800 RPM. Actually a little bit better than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, myself as well, it doesn't seem like it really lost that much from when we've tested it and run it before. So I think it looks pretty normal.
I guess that's all there is. I think we can go change up to the 1 3/4 and hopefully eliminate our exhaust leak and explosions while we're at it.
I hope.
Okay, ready? Here we come. 1 3/4 header changeover. Well, there's the 1 3/4 power curve right there. We're looking at 415.3 pound-feet of torque at 4,800, basically no change. And up top, 432.1 horsepower, which is an improvement, and it carried it to 6,000 RPM. It used to make peak power at 5,800 RPM. But as per usual, the whole story is not in the peak numbers, so let's look at the overlay. Interesting. Black lines 1 3/4, the larger headers. Red lines 1 5/8, the smaller headers. Look how the bigger ones made more torque.
Yeah.
Once again, sort of in this case, dashing the whole small headers make more torque.
Right. That's always unpredictable, but that's a big gain right there.
I think it's a how high is up thing. What's the engine that you're dealing with? If the engine was a whole lot more tame, if it was a 300 horsepower unit, maybe it would make less torque with the bigger header.
This is just a more appropriate header for this size and horsepower engine.
Right. We cannot say categorically that 1 3/4 always makes more torque than 1 5/8.
No.
It depends on the application. In this case, clearly the 1 5/8 was choking the engine out. What's interesting is that it's actually the same in peak torque and right in this area up there. But obviously up at the top end, you would clearly choose the 1 3/4. So we're vindicated.
Yeah, I like the 1 3/4 a lot better. That's a nicer curve for sure.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, though, is it looked to me like it was richer throughout the pull. Explain that to me, because we'd expect it to be leaner.
Actually, I wouldn't expect it to be either rich or lean. I would just expect it to be very, very close.
I guess I was thinking exhaust restriction tends to make it richer, but I guess we're not looking at restrictions as much as we are pulse width, lengths, and things like that.
Yeah, it got richer. I'm not sure I can explain it. I don't normally see that big of a swing, but
let's show the audience what we're talking about. So this curve is averaging roughly 12 to 1 down in here, and this one is 11 1/4 to 1. 11 1/4 1 is richer, meaning there's more fuel in the air than the red line, which is leaner, which...
It's a half a ratio difference.
So what's the bottom line on this change in air-fuel ratio? Do you feel like we need to go jet the thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's something there. It depends on how close you want to get. I mean, there's 3 or 4 horsepower there, I think, kind of potentially over the whole curve. So if we're looking for those kind of numbers, then I think we need to go address it.
So we're gonna go jet the carburetor. We're gonna take 3 numbers out of it and try and get the air-fuel ratio to match the 1 5/8 header a little bit better. Basically didn't care. No. Now we've got our power once we leaned the thing out a little bit. First, let's have a look and see how you did on your jetting.
Apparently I didn't whiff it that bad.
You did not whiff it. That's essentially the same. Yeah, from 12.0 to 12.1. Yeah, it's the same. There's some anomaly up here, but it doesn't matter. So, okay, let's look at the power difference now that it's leaned out to match. There's the comparison of lean to rich. The short version is it just doesn't care.
No.
The black line is with it a little bit leaner. It actually gave up just a tiny, tiny bit down here, but it doesn't care. Let's take the leaner curve and compare that with the 1 5/8 header so that we can be more. Okay, there we go. Black lines of the 1 3/4 larger header. Red lines of the 1 5/8 smaller header, and it's kind of doing the exact same thing that it did before the tune-up. No surprise whatsoever. So there's your answer from small to big. Now we're gonna move even bigger. We're gonna go to a header that has 1 3/4 tube right out of the port because that's all we can bolt to the head, and then it steps up to a 1 7/8 for the rest of the run. Now we're looking at the results with the largest headers, the ones that have mostly 1 7/8 inch pipe. We made 414 pound-feet of torque at 4,700, which sounds very familiar, basically hasn't changed the whole time. 436.9 horsepower, the biggest number that we've seen, at the highest RPM that we've seen, 6,100. But I have a feeling that if we overlay that with the 1 3/4 inch header, it's gonna give us a completely different story. And that is a different story. The red line here is the smaller 1 3/4 inch header, and the black line is the 1 7/8. This is probably the biggest part of the story.
Yeah, for me it certainly is. That's kind of what I saw when I rolled into the throttles. I went, man, it's just not there.
Yeah,
right.
I looked at Steve and went,
yeah.
Yeah, but I also expected it to carry on. I wasn't sure that it was gonna make more power up at the top, and it did.
I wasn't 100% sure, but it certainly had a chance, being as though the header's larger. And it's also, as we just went and found out, it's shorter.
Right. Yeah, the shorter tube length, you think, is what's causing this right here?
That's my guess, is the length, you know, being 4 inches shorter. I think that affected it more drastically than the change in diameter.
Right in there, and it depends on where your operating range is going to be. I mean, that's all occurring at 3,500 or below, or 3,600.
This isn't a drag race engine. You know, if you were using this as a drag race engine, you're weak. So I would say in the real world, I would choose the smaller header if I was throwing this in my Mustang or whatever.
Well, certainly normally aspirated.
Aspirated,
I'd be
yeah.
choosing the 1 3/4, because how often are you here and how often are you down there?
I guess what I'm looking at next is we're going to install the supercharger, and I want to see if the trend with the header is the same with the supercharger, or if we see a bigger and bigger gain. Like, for example, the 1 3/4 header, let's say the blower adds 150 horsepower. With the larger header, will it add 165?
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So next step, we're gonna go install our Pro Charger and return down to the bottom with the 1 5/8 inch header and progress back through all of the headers with boost. Boost. And the precious. I love me a Pro Charger centrifugal supercharger. This model is an F1A94, which is way more than we need for this engine. This is the very supercharger we used to make 750 horsepower on a stock bottom end 350 Chevy on another episode of Engine Masters. And I've got the same model on my 347-inch land speed engine that makes nearly 1,100 horsepower. So that tells you about the capability of this thing. And actually, it moves so much air that we had to take steps to reduce the boost on this one. When Brule first hooked it up, even with a huge crank pulley and a 4.5-inch blower pulley, this thing was making like 13 pounds, and the engine was on its way towards making 800 horsepower. Now, we wanted our 351 to survive, and so we had to tame it down. So they did two things to cut the boost down to 9 PSI. One, they restricted the inlet by adding this big tube and a pretty small air filter. By letting less air go into the supercharger, it has less air to work with and it makes less boost. Now, here's the other thing that's really wild. This is a hole in our discharge tube right there, and it is big around as my finger. That is like a 3/4-inch hole right there. And drilling that only dropped 1 PSI of boost, which will blow your mind. So we're gonna go see this thing make, I don't know, 600 plus horsepower right now, and then we're gonna step back through all our different headers to find out which one is best for boost. Wow, it's way louder.
I know. It sounds wicked.
It really does.
That was 10 pounds or so boost.
Yeah.
Wow.
That thing shrieks.
No, totally.
That was cool. We just made 553.7 pound-feet of torque, and it pushed the RPM way up to 5,400 RPM. We were looking at 4,900 RPM with this header before. And the horsepower, 620.1, also higher in the RPM range at 6,300 RPM.
Do you think that the increase in the points of peak torque and peak power are because of the header or because of the rising boost curve?
Oh, it's the boost
curve.
for sure.
Yeah, there's no
right.
question.
Yeah, it's moving more air for sure.
Yeah, it's getting more boost as the RPM rises, so that's going to pull
this type of supercharger just continues to move up.
that's going to pull the torque curve up as you're revving. So
Let's find out what the boost curve looks like and what our peak was. Wow, nice steady climb. This is what you see with a centrifugal supercharger. They start off low. As RPM increase, so does the boost. So we started off down here at basically 2 point something and ended up at a peak of 9.6 PSI of boost, so not quite 10. Now let's have a look just versus NA, just because we can. Wow. Do I have to tell you which color lines are NA and which ones are blown? I don't think so. Down there's NA, up there's blown. But yeah, once again, this is the rising boost curve situation. See how the difference is less down at the bottom and far greater at the top? It's because that boost is just rising and shoving the thing higher and higher and higher in power.
do you also notice that the curves are the same basic shape, but they're just exaggerated with boost?
And tilted up like this. They're not railroad tracks.
No.
It's not a perfect divide. It's more of a tilt up because of the boost.
It diverges because of the boost increasing.
But what Steve's saying is that the actual shape of it is the same.
Yeah.
Like if you overlaid them, they would follow that same arc.
Especially if you're looking at the torque curve where they're both on the downward trajectory on the roll in, and then at about the same point they start to
climb.
level off.
Yep. And then they start to fall off really at the same rate.
Yeah. So it's
That's kind of the thing we keep on seeing, is that whatever the engine does NA is the same thing with boost, just more.
well, that remains to be seen with the bigger header. So
Which is the whole point of the
I want to
episode.
hop in there and swap to the bigger header right now.
Go ahead. I didn't know he volunteered to change the headers. Let's kick back. Now we're gonna run the 1 3/4 inch header with the supercharger. Here are our results with the 1 3/4 inch header and the blower, and I've already done some maths here and it's blowing my mind. First of all, the peak power numbers are 553.8 pound-feet of torque at 5,400 RPM, which I will notice is 1/10 of a pound-foot better than the 1 5/8 inch headers, and the horsepower now is 623.8 at 6,500 RPM, which is 3.7 horsepower different. Now the math that I did is also the average power from 3,000 to 6,500 RPM, and without even reading you the data, I will tell you it is the same within like less than one number. The same. But let's look at the curve. Is it also the same? Whoa! Mind blower. The red lines are the 1 5/8 inch headers, and the 1 3/4 are in black. And the only place that made a difference is way up at the top, where we think we had some sort of dyno anomaly anyway, or something going on where the 1 3/4 made a tiny bit more power, or maybe it's stacking up right there.
We saw the same trend NA with a little dip here with the small header.
Oh, did we?
Versus the big 1 7/8. It smoothed it out quite in that last couple hundred RPMs.
And this right here, I'm not calling that anything whatsoever. They are the same. The same. Okay, when we made the change from 1 5/8 to 1 3/4 when we were naturally aspirated, I looked at peak horsepower and we picked up 1.9%. I looked at the average throughout the curve from 3,000 to 6,500 RPM, and we picked up 1.15% on average for torque and 1.56 on average for horsepower. So we saw a gain NA. We did not see anything even calculatable.
And curiously, with the header change NA, we saw a divergence down low, which we're not showing here at all when we're testing the same two headers under boost, right?
Can you overlay the naturally aspirated 1 5/8 versus 1 3/4 on this same chart?
Sure.
Okay, so that's that 1% or 1.1% change that I was talking about, is that it's different down here than it is out here, but it just tilts the curve and they change.
It really does, and it's lower everywhere. Green and green.
Well, they overlay here.
Yeah.
So under boost, it seems like the engine's less sensitive to header diameter so far. If you
Which
had
blows my mind. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, but what's the scavenging effect of the blower? It's creating positive cylinder pressure. It's not just the depression as the pistons going in and all the tuning of the waves and stuff. You actually have
pressure.
I mean, you've got pressure mechanically pushing into the cylinder.
It's something that I really wouldn't have thought of before, but, you know, it kind of follows a trend we've seen numerous times with testing other components. Everything seems like it matters less under pressure.
I would say everything that we've seen so far is that if whatever happens NA is what happens under boost, except this, because that tilt doesn't exist in the curve. And we've all read and said and heard forever that you need a bigger exhaust tube with boost.
Well, maybe you do. We could always change to even bigger pipes to see if that tends to reinforce this.
But this alone is already
pretty interesting.
Not what I expected whatsoever. This is killing my preconceived notion.
All day long I've been saying, well, it's like a bigger engine. But there's more to it than it just being a bigger engine, because it's not normally aspirated anymore, and all of those dynamics change.
Well, you ready to go put on the 1 7/8 and have mind blown again?
Is it my turn?
We'll help. This will be our final test. This is the headers that are stepped from 1 3/4 to 1 7/8. And the wild card is they're a little bit shorter too. So we're gonna find out if boost cares.
It's like that.
Ding, 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 ding. 637.2 horsepower, 566.4 pound-feet of torque. Yeah, the peak torque and the peak horsepower is way up. And look at this.
Well, we better look at the boost.
I know,
make
we
sure
gotta
it's
look
the
at
same.
everything. Yeah, let's look at the boost. See if for some reason that climbed. Yeah, so basically the boost didn't change regardless of the header style, which is actually good because it means there's less variables in the testing.
Yeah, if we saw an extra couple of PSI there, then
we'd start hunting for Y and everything. Okay, what should we compare it to first? I guess we should throw up the boosted 1 3/4 inch header. This comparison shows the 1 7/8 inch headers in black and the 1 3/4 in red. This is the curious part.
It's a whole lot better now than it was NA.
Right, doesn't matter as much. So we can see that we made more power essentially everywhere with the larger header. I mean, that's definitely a choice you'd make, run the larger header. So why did it make a difference here and it didn't make a difference from 1 5/8 to 1 3/4?
which you would think would make more difference starting from way smaller and then giving it some room. And then usually when you give it a little more room by the same proportion, you know, you get diminishing returns. But right here, it seems like...
Yeah, it's the same diameter change, although the volume change is much more radical.
The percentage of the orifices is
much bigger.
More.
Yeah, I mean, in diameter it's the same, but the volume is radically different, which I guess is what we're seeing here. I'm just surprised that the 1 5/8 and the 1 3/4 were so similar, and this one's making that much of a jump. So that's telling me that both the other headers were a restriction. Let's look at the NA comparison of these same two headers, 1 3/4 versus 1 7/8.
See how it just killed the bottom end out of it?
Yeah, right here is where you're looking about how the larger header, when it was naturally aspirated, killed bottom end, and we did not really see that trend under boost. It is a little change here and there, but not a distinct loss like you've seen here and here.
So there is a less sensitivity as far as that low-end torque's concerned with our changes in headers compared to NA.
Exactly, and naturally aspirated, the larger header pulled away way up here at, what, 5,400 RPM, whereas with boost, it pulled away at 3,500, 600, 700 RPM, basically. So my overall conclusion to the episode is, I don't understand why the 1 5/8 and the 1 3/4 ran identical, and I'm vindicated in my presumption that the largest header was going to make more power once we were under boost. I think the thing that's frustrating all of us is that we're not seeing a pattern. You know, normally we see a regular progression that's sort of logical. In this case, we're not. So the real argument here is, why did the two smaller headers run exactly the same? And in this case, with the 1 7/8 versus the 1 3/4, is the difference because of the larger tube diameter? Or is it because they're a shorter primary length?
It's a slight difference in the primary length. I mean, it's 3 inches, which will certainly make a difference, but not a huge one. I think it finally got to a point where there was enough header diameter that it was able to make a little more power. I don't think the supercharged engines are as sensitive to header configuration, you know, like primary links and collectors and all of that stuff below peak torque, like an NA engine is.
Yeah, we saw that definitively as far as what happened at the bottom of the curve. The 1 5/8 and 1 3/4 were almost the same, and then the 1 7/8 did show an increase. You know, it was distinct. So that is the toughie.
Yeah, so I mean, the conclusions that we can make, I believe, only really apply to this engine and the header configurations that we tried. If you're duplicating this 351, I would definitely run a 1 3/4 inch header, naturally aspirated, in my opinion. Although the 1 7/8 did make a little bit more top end power. I like the average better on the 1 3/4. And I would run this stepped 1 3/4 to 1 7/8 inch header if I was supercharged.
Absolutely.
And I think that I would carry that trend into other engines just sort of intuitively, but I don't see a pattern where I can say, this tends to be what's going to happen for an engine of this style.
Well, it's hard to draw one conclusion from it because each engine configuration is going to be slightly different. And the application that it's used in might be slightly different. So even in an NA application, you're going to pick a different header for different things. And I think the same thing's going to happen here with the supercharger.
The thing is, engines, I think they vary, and you don't always see a positive conclusion, but really, knowledge is cumulative, and we just didn't see a pattern this time.
But we learned something.
But did we?
I think
Maybe
I
you
did.
did. Hopefully you did. Because that's our goal, is trying to teach you something every time on Engine Masters.
I want to hop in there and swap to the bigger header right now.
Go ahead. I didn't know he volunteered to change the headers. Let's kick back. You want a cola or anything? Can I get you beer?
Beer's good.
Beer's good? All right, I'll be right back. You still have the MGD in the refrigerator?
You know, I can't really do that and drive my car home, so.
So not anymore? Oh, come on. I need you to go buy beer.
I'll have a cold brew.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các bạn, lại là mình đây. Lại giao hai cho các bạn xem. Các bạn ơi, các bạn thay like và có một nút kênh của mình thật hay nhé. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi kênh của mình. Thank you các bạn rất nhiều nha. Ok, thank you.
Anh ơi, trên chiến là con lên pin được bao tiền?
900 mấy.
900 mấy à?
chó vàng nè. Đấy. Đấy.
Đó.
Chó vàng đấy nha. Hiu. Vịt luôn.
Anh xin mấy cái rồi. Anh có mấy cái rồi cho ta.
Anh không có cây.
Kênh nào nhỉ?
Anh có run nữa.
Anh làm mấy kênh rồi cho ta.
Không,
Hả?
không có kênh nào.
Rồi. Kinh sảnh của anh đâu nha.
Hả?
Kinh sảnh của anh rồi nó như nào?
Nói đi. Nói chữ màu xanh nha.
Màu xanh là của anh.
Ừ. Cái này hỏi tao mèo ấy, bố cụ tao biết.
Mèo gốc của anh rồi.
Hả?
Mèo gốc của anh rồi.
Gốc là mèo ấy. Giờ nó mèo mission mèo nè.
Có. Pina có.
Mèo gốc.
Kênh của anh được mấy nghìn?
209.
Anh có mấy cây?
3 cây. Cây con khỉ 250 đô là 4.
Kênh khỉ này. Kênh mới này. Kênh 3 cây. Kênh Spiderman rồi à? 4 đúng không?
Cây con nhện.
Kênh con nhện này. Kênh xanh này.
Xanh, con khỉ.
Khỉ này.
Cây ngoài này nhá.
Này mới này. Không biết có mấy cây?
Tặng nhau.
Tháng trước thôi.
Tháng trước à? Tháng trước có
Một kênh rồi.
làm chung với Tuấn 2 kênh.
Hai kênh như nào?
Kênh
Một kênh rồi đối tác, một kênh xanh này. Kênh 25k đối tác là kênh nào? Kênh đối tác là gái đúng không? 10k thì 10k đúng không? Chết rồi. Anh xin được có mấy cây?
anh hả? 3 kênh.
Cả giới đi anh.
Rồi á. Rồi đi đến 3 kênh nhà hôm trước thì giờ mỗi kênh thôi.
Rồi một kênh rồi. Anh giới có kênh Zoom rồi đúng không?
Đúng rồi.
Một kênh được 190 đô này. Một. Kênh, hai kênh, anh có kênh nào nữa? Đây của anh có một kênh giới, kênh 100 đô thôi.
Đi xét rồi đấy. Muốn bây giờ đâu đi xét rồi.
Anh có một kênh giới thôi.
Hả?
Anh có một kênh giới thôi.
Đúng. Một kênh đi 3 kênh 9 thì cũng vậy, một kênh Honda mình nhớ rồi.
Rồi xét rồi.
Đúng.
Không tính không? Thế là anh còn có một kênh thôi. Anh còn đúng một kênh giới thôi. Không có 2 kênh nhỉ? 3 kênh nhỉ? Em không kênh nào đi. Chết tôi rồi.
Ốc Minh Mai.
Cái này không kênh nào luôn.
Chó này. Chó vàng này. Chó cam này.
Anh không kênh.
Cái này lên 6,5 à?
Họ tự nhiên thì phải bù lên kênh.
Công luôn.
Chúng ta được 20.
Vẽ 20.
20 mấy chục. 7k chụp anh kênh đi không thì
Kênh nào vậy? Chơi mấy kênh?
Một cân giờ.
Kênh nào? Không có một kênh giờ đúng không? Một kênh 9K giờ đúng không?
Kênh 9K giờ. Một kênh
Một kênh 85 đô. Hai kênh đúng không?
còn kênh reset.
Còn mấy kênh là?
Ba kênh là một kênh reset, hai kênh.
Đã hỏi mấy kênh nào thì ba kênh. Chỉ còn hai kênh thôi đúng không?
Còn hai kênh. To nhỉ, tiền.
Anh đi xem đâu.
Tây nó xem bảo Việt Nam gãy thật.
Thôi thế nào.
Kinh thực Ấn Độ làm đồ ăn cứ như kiểu thịt chó ăn. Tiếp thực.
Sâu trốn ăn. Anh cũ đi. Sâu rồi.
Vâng. Đang làm kiểu và làm cùng cho cả của con chị.
Thôi.
Thôi.
Đang quay content nội dung phản cảm cái thằng này.
Phản cảm gì đâu? Chơi trong lớp áo phản cảm ra rồi.
Ôi,
Hai gấu đen dưới này.
mặc cái áo kìa, chân nó cũng ra lên, mặc áo ra anh cho bú đỡ phản cảm. Công này. Ui. Không ăn hả?
Ngáo mà hai con đấy đen thì tôi trắng. Hàng cả 6 ghế.
3-4 con cùng với nhau.
Xa lắm.
Mình nói là nó mắc tinh nữa.
Đây này, tinh không?
Vâng.
Là tí tinh. Chị thích làm tí tinh.
Sợ mình
Cứ mồm luôn.
Ông dê.
Này trước công sáng đưa 500.
Tránh 500 thôi.
Tôi gọi 5 triệu đưa 500.
Có đấy.
Chịu. Không phải. Nhưng mà chém xong rồi 5 cổ.
Thì đóng cửa là thế này.
Mẹ đi dọn nhà không?
Đúng. Chuẩn luôn.
Cắn luôn. Chó vàng. Đấy, chó vàng luôn. Trên. Kiều luôn. Trên. Đấy. Cá ngựa luôn. Lý chó đấy luôn. Đấy, trên. Quên nó ăn một chó kia ngon. Đang chim một méo như này. Đấy. Có gì làm ở đây. Tôi thăm tôi. Đang chim cái cụt. Cá xanh. Hai con cá xanh đấy. À con nữa, con cá heo. Đấy, hai con gấu này. Sát cuốn. Ngọc. Đó. Rơi. Cá heo ăn hai con cá gì là ăn hai con rơi. Cá ăn sên là ăn được hai con hươu. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại các bạn. Mình xin kết thúc video tại đây. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi kênh của mình.